I had not cried in 11 years, not at my retirement, not at my son's wedding, not even the morning I found her reading glasses on the nightstand 6 days after we buried her. And then my brain shut down in the garage, and I came back a different man. 71 years old, 47 of them married to the same woman. I want you to understand what kind of man I was before you hear what I'm about to tell you, because the kind of man I was matters. I was not the sort who talked about feelings the way people talk about feelings now. I fixed things. If something was broken, I repaired it. If something was heavy, I carried it. I learned that from my father, and he learned it from his, and it seemed to me a reasonable way to move through the world. My wife used to say, and I can hear her voice when I say this even now, she used to say, "You love so hard and so quietly, old man, that sometimes I have to press my ear against your chest just to hear it." That was her. That was exactly her. She had been gone 11 months when my legs went. I was standing at my workbench, not doing anything important, sorting bolts into a coffee can, the kind of job you give your hands when your mind won't settle. And then my right hand stopped working, just stopped, like a radio cutting out mid-sentence. The wrench I was holding hit the concrete floor, and I looked at my hand like it belonged to someone else. And then the left side of my face went numb, and then the floor came up to meet me. The paramedics found me 8 minutes later. My son had called to check in. I didn't answer. He drove over, found the garage door open, and me face down beside the workbench. The hospital confirmed it that evening. Ischemic stroke, significant. A blood clot had blocked the supply to the left hemisphere. I was unresponsive for 22 minutes before they brought me back. The attending physician told my son to prepare himself for the possibility that whoever came back might not be entirely the same man who went down. He was right about that part. He just didn't understand the direction of the change. Because those 22 minutes were not empty, I wasn't out. I was somewhere that had the smell of motor oil and cedar and my wife's hand lotion, which is a combination that should not exist anywhere outside of one specific building on one specific street. And what I found inside those 22 minutes is the only reason I am sitting here telling you this, instead of keeping it locked in the drawer, where I kept everything else. 1 second. The cold weight of the wrench in my palm, the smell of dust and iron, the coffee can rattling against the edge of the workbench. The next second, all of it gone, not faded, lifted. The way you lift a tarp off something you've been storing in the yard, everything underneath exactly as you left it. But the tarp gone, and suddenly there's air where there wasn't any before. And here you'd ask me, did it hurt when the stroke hit, and was it bad? Yes. For about 4 seconds, it was the worst thing I had ever felt. A white-hot pressure behind my left eye, like someone driving a spike into the socket. And then, nothing. Not a reduction. An erasure, like the pain had been a sound and someone had simply reached over and unplugged it. I don't know how else to say it. I've tried before and it doesn't come out right, but unplugged. What replaced it wasn't darkness. I keep wanting to call it darkness because that's the word we have for when the lights go out. But darkness is something your eyes register. There were no eyes. There was only rest, a stillness so total that the concept of time lost its grip. I was not waiting, I was not sleeping. I simply was, in the way a stone at the bottom of a river simply is, present, undisturbed, untouched by the current moving over it. But then something changed, not an arrival, more like the rest itself began to have a shape, and the shape was familiar. The garage came first, not gradually, all at once, the way your eyes adjust to a room when someone opens the curtains on a bright morning. I knew it immediately. The low ceiling, the smell of it, the particular quality of light coming through the 2 small windows above the workbench. Our garage, the one we had built together in the 3rd year of our marriage, when we couldn't afford a contractor and did it ourselves on weekends over the course of 2 summers. The concrete floor I had poured. The shelving, she had insisted on painting the same green as the kitchen walls, which I had argued against and she had ignored, and which I had quietly loved for 40 years without ever telling her. And here you'd ask me, did the people look the way they did when they died? or different? Different, completely different. Better is not the right word, and more like corrected. The way a photograph looks when you find the original negative after years of looking at a faded copy. She was standing by the workbench. Not the woman from the last year. Not the woman with the oxygen tube. Not the woman whose hands had grown thin and whose voice had gotten tired. The woman from 30 years earlier, maybe more, upright, solid. Her hair the dark brown it had been before it went silver. She was wearing the blue cardigan she used to wear on Saturday mornings. The one with the loose button on the third eyelet that she never got around to fixing because she said loose buttons were a thing that gave a garment. Character. Her hands were on the edge of the workbench the way she always stood when she was watching me work. Arms straight, leaning forward slightly, like she was ready to hand me the next tool before I asked for it. She looked at me the way she always looked at me. Not surprised, not relieved, not overwhelmed, just there. The way she had been there for 47 years. Steady and warm and quietly certain that everything was going to be all right. I want to stop here and tell you something, because I know some of you have been missing someone for a long time, and I want you to hear exactly what I saw in her face. There was no grief in it. No residue of the last months, no memory of the hospital, no trace of the hard work of dying. She looked like a woman who had set down a very heavy bag, walked into a room she recognized, and was simply waiting for the rest of the afternoon to be good. That was all. No weight on her, no wear. Just her standing in the light coming through the window she had argued should be bigger, in the garage we had built together with our own hands. And then I heard it. A sound I had not heard in 30 years. The sound of nails on concrete. The specific rapid click of a medium-sized dog moving fast, coming around a corner, getting traction on a hard floor. A sound I would know in any room, in any life, after any amount of time. Because there is only one animal in the history of my life who moved exactly like that. He came around the end of the workbench at full speed, low to the ground, ears back, tail working so hard his entire back half was swinging, the way he always ran when he'd spotted me coming up the driveway. He hit my legs the same way he always had, both front paws up, nose first into my palm, then spinning in a full circle like he needed to verify from every angle that I was actually there. I want to be careful here because I've thought about this part more than any other. He was not running to me specifically the way he used to trot over to beg scraps. He ran the way a dog runs when a room it loves suddenly fills with a person it loves. The joy was for the being together, not for the reunion itself. Does that make sense? It's a subtle thing. He was not returning something owed. He was simply present. The way all the animals I glimpsed in that place were present, moving between people with an ease that had no agenda in it, bringing something warm and living to every hand that was open. And every hand in that place was open. I could see, beyond the garage, through the back wall that was no longer a wall, a field I do not have the right words for. Not a meadow, not a park. Something closer to the land behind my grandfather's house. In the summer I turned 9, the summer before his farm was sold. When the grass was long and the light came in at an angle in the late afternoon that made everything look like it had been waiting for you. Specifically, that kind of field, full of people, full of motion, dogs moving among them, a horse standing quiet at the far edge while a man leaned his forehead against its neck. Creatures I recognized and some I did not, moving through the crowd the way music moves through a room, touching every corner, belonging to no one, lifting everything it passed through. But it was my wife I couldn't stop looking at, because she had turned back to me and she was saying something. And what she said is the part I almost didn't include, because I still don't entirely know how to carry it. She said, "Yup, you've been sitting in here with the door closed." That's all, 5 words, and I knew exactly, with a certainty that had no argument in it, exactly what she meant, because she had said it before. Not in those words, but in the meaning. She had said it in a dozen different ways over 47 years, and I had nodded and changed the subject and gone back to the workbench. I'd lived a good life by most measures. I'd worked hard and provided and shown up. I had not been cruel. I had not been absent in the ways that men are absent when they want to be, but I had kept the door closed, not against her, never against her, against everything that required me to be soft in front of it, against grief, against fear, against the kind of love that leaves you completely exposed when it ends. I had loved her the way a man loves something he is terrified to lose, quietly and from behind a workbench, with my hands always busy so I wouldn't have to just stand there and feel it. The garage had given me 47 years of that, somewhere to go when things got heavy, a door to close, work to do. And she had known, she had always known, that the garage was where I went to feel things I didn't know how to say out loud. And here she was, in the garage, not despite that, because of that. She had met me in the one room where she knew I'd be able to hear her. I don't have a word for what came through me when I understood that. The field behind her was enormous. The people in it were walking the way people walk, when the day has been long and good, and there is no reason to hurry home because home is where they already are, upright, whole. The old ones without the weight of years, the young ones without the shadow of what hadn't happened yet. Everyone simply in the fullness of what they were supposed to be if the long work of living hadn't bent them along the way. And I understood, with the same quietness I had carried everything else, that this was not something I was observing from outside. This was a preview, not a reward, not a destination, not a place where certain people go, a morning that is coming, that is still coming. That the one who built that field is holding in reserve, the way you hold a room ready for someone you know is on their way. That is the whole of it, everything I thought I understood about what mattered. The work, the fixing, the providing, the door I kept closed so the difficult feelings couldn't get out, all of it measured against that field. And I saw clearly what had been small and what had been large. The large things were not the things I had spent the most time on. She looked at me one more time, not the way people look when they are saying goodbye. The way she looked at me when I would leave for work in the morning. A look that said, I know where you're going, I know you'll come back, and the house will be here when you do. And then the garage came apart, not violently, the way a dream comes apart when the alarm goes off, not destroyed, just no longer the thing you're inside of. And in its place, cold. The specific cold of a hospital room, the kind that gets into the collar of your shirt and stays there. A sound I recognized, the beeping of a monitor, steady and mechanical, the least musical sound in the world. The smell of antiseptic, the weight of my own body, which I had forgotten about entirely, settling back onto me like a coat laid over my shoulders. Then the light, too white, the overhead kind that makes everything look like it's being examined. Then the sound of my son's voice, saying my name the way you say someone's name when you're not sure the name will reach them. And here you'd ask me, why did you come back? Did you choose, or was it chosen for you? I don't know. I have thought about this more than anything. What I can tell you is that it did not feel like a choice I made. It felt like a door I hadn't reached yet. Like I'd been shown the room through the window, and then someone had said gently and without apology, not yet. The way you tell a child on Christmas Eve that morning is still a few hours off. Not a punishment, just the truth about where we are in the story. I opened my eyes. My son was holding my left hand with both of his, and he was crying in the quiet way men cry when they've been holding it together for a long time and have finally run out of room to hold it. The nurse said my name. I squeezed my son's hand. My right hand still wasn't cooperating, but my left was there. He looked at me like a man who has just been handed something he thought was already gone. I wanted to tell him everything. I didn't have the words yet. It would take weeks before I could speak clearly enough to try. But there was something on my face, apparently, that didn't need words. The nurse told my son later that in 20 years, she had never seen a man come back from where I had been looking the way I looked. She said I looked like a man who had just gotten good news he hadn't expected. She wasn't wrong. I'm going to speak to you plainly, because I am 71 years old. and I no longer have the patience for going around things. If you are watching this because you have lost someone, a husband, a wife, a parent, a child, a friend who knew the version of you that nobody else got to see, I need you to hear this from a man who spent 7 decades keeping the door closed. They are resting. I don't mean that as comfort language, as something you say at a funeral, because there's nothing better to say. I mean it as the most accurate description I have for what I saw. The woman who spent her last year tethered to an oxygen machine and couldn't make it to the kitchen without stopping to catch her breath. She was standing at a workbench in the full strength of herself, holding the edge of it the way she held the edge of everything, like she belonged there, and she knew it, and there was nowhere else she'd rather be. The years you're spending missing her are, on her side of it, nothing at all. Not a long wait, not a slow dark. The last moment of this life and the first moment of that morning will arrive for her as 2 halves of the same breath, the exhale and the inhale, with no distance between them. She is not somewhere waiting for time to pass. She is simply resting the way you rest after a day that was long and full and finally done. And that morning is coming. I've seen the edge of it through the back wall of a garage, in the vision of a 71-year-old man with a blood clot and a workbench and 47 years of love he mostly kept to himself. It is real, the field is real, the wholeness is real, the running toward each other is real. What I came back knowing, what I brought with me out of those 22 minutes that I did not have when I went in, is this. The door I kept closed all those years was not protecting anything worth protecting. The only things worth protecting are the ones that require you to leave the door open. The people, the ordinary Tuesday evenings, the hand you can still hold tonight. The most important thing you can do with the years you have is reach toward the one who built that field. I don't mean church, necessarily. I mean the quiet hunger to know who made all of it, and to live in a way he'd recognize. That's the whole job. Everything else is the workbench. Useful, good even, but not the point. I still go into the garage. I still sort bolts into coffee cans when my mind won't settle, but I leave the door open now. Tell me in the comments, whose face are you most hoping to see on that morning, and what is the first thing you would say to them? I read every single one, and I remember more of them than you'd think.